Hey, what's up everyone? Ben at ProFixer, and today on the channel we have a Nintendo Switch with a broken LCD. And as you can see here, the LCD is incredibly damaged, and actually the housing is a little bit broken too. And what we're going to be doing on this particular one is removing the old LCD and replacing it so that the Switch is fully functional once again. Everything on my workbench is linked up in the description below, so be sure to check that out. And also be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in future videos. Without further ado, let's get started on this broken Switch. Here in front of me on my workbench, I have a broken Nintendo Switch with a damaged LCD. This particular one I've had sitting on my blue heat mat at 60 degrees Celsius to warm it up and to release some of the adhesive, because we will have to pull off the front digitizer. This particular device is a little bit unique. It's Nintendo's flagship device. It's been out for a few years now. One of the cool things about this is that the front digitizer, or the touchscreen, is made of plastic. It's very resistant to damage. However, it can be scratched pretty easily, but it will make it a little bit easier to do this repair, as we can almost peel it off the front to access the LCD. But before we do all of that, we do need to pull off the back cover and remove almost everything from the inside. So I'm going to get started removing the outer screws. I will need to use a tri-wing screwdriver and a standard Phillips, which do come in my Injured Gadgets multi-tool pack. I've linked that in the description below, so be sure to pick one of those up if you don't have a good tool set already. So just start by taking out all the outer screws. Cool, found a game in there. Pull out the game cartridge as well before you try to open up the housing after you remove the screws. And then carefully open up the back. Be sure to organize all of your screws so you don't lose track of them. And at this point, I would recommend unplugging the battery. This particular one, I wasn't really able to turn it off, so we'll do that now. Just lift underneath the battery connector, and then you'll see the fan turn off. And so in order to get into the Switch and be able to remove the LCD and also the digitizer safely, you will need to remove the game reader. So go ahead and take out a couple of screws that are holding it in. Nope. And these connectors here, what you'll want to look out for is they have little flip tabs on them. I don't recommend using any kind of tools. Don't pry from the edges, but go right in the middle and use your fingernail and lift up on the tab itself. It'll flip up like a little door, and then you'll be able to remove the flex cable itself. And an interesting thing to note, in order to keep track of these, any of them that have the black flip tab on it, it means that the contacts go down. So if you notice on this particular connector, the non-contact side is up, and the ones that are white are contact side up. So contact side down is black, contact side up is white. That's something that you may not have noticed before, but we can see here in this particular instance that is the case. Oh, maybe he just lifted it up and then put it right back in. And so in this particular step here, we're going to put the screws back in the heatsink itself. We lifted the heatsink up just a tiny bit in order to get the game cartridge out. But that is just about all that we needed to do, and that will give us enough room to be able to take apart the rest of the device. So what I'm going to do with these side rails, I'm going to go ahead and put one screw back in each side to hold them onto the device. That'll keep them from flopping around and also prevent having to remove any unneeded cables. That way you can leave everything plugged in and not have to worry about damaging anything. Alright, so there's one last connector that you do need to release, and it's going to be this one down here. We've already flipped it up, and so now we're just going to slide out the flex cable itself. So taking a look at that, that should be enough, I believe. We're going to go ahead and open it up and kind of take a look, but I believe that should be enough so that we're able to replace the LCD. But if it's not, we can always come back and remove some more from the motherboard, but I believe that should be enough in this particular case. What we're going to do is we're going to flip this over. Be careful of your flex cables themselves. The device should be pretty warm at this point. What you can do is, I always like to use a razor blade to lift up on anything that needs to be pried on. It makes a nice even pry surface that doesn't put a lot of pressure on any single point. It'll then allow you to slide in another tool so that you're able to lift up, the digitizer itself. So we're just going to work down the edges, and we're not inserting the razor blade really at all. We're just pressing it down and then tipping it over. So as we're tipping it, we're not pushing it in. All that we're doing is just grabbing the little tiny edge there and releasing the adhesive. More or less, we just really want to fatigue the adhesive. We're really not trying to, remove the digitizer yet. We're just working around the edges to fatigue it just a little bit. Just continue to work around the edges until you have, for the most part, fatigued all the adhesive all the way around. So now what you can do is you can lift it up just a tiny bit and hold it with your finger, and that'll allow the digitizer to flex just a little bit. And then as you pry on it with your razor blade, it will release the adhesive as you go down. And we're not using the cutting edge because it's sharp necessarily, because we don't want it to cut in. All that we're doing is we're using it because it's completely thin and fits between the bezel and the digitizer and doesn't cause any damage. So as you're prying with it, make sure that you're not pushing into the digitizer itself. You're really just using it as a very thin, strong pry tool. And there is one more that we do need to release up here at the top. This looks like probably a backlight circuit, so we're going to flip that little connector there, and we're going to pull that right out. And now at this point, your LCD may have came out with your digitizer itself. We can easily pull that off. Go ahead and set your switch off to the side and continue working on your blue heat mat as we release the adhesive for the LCD itself. Something that can come in handy is a tool such as this. Is just a little pry tool. But you want to be careful because working on a touch screen, if you press too hard, you could actually damage the touch circuit. So we're going to work just very carefully on the edge here. And we should be able to just lift it up just a tiny bit and be able to get underneath it. When you pull on it, since it's very hot, it may just separate the backlight circuit or the backlight panel itself, which you can see right inside of there that it is separating. But we do want to get a little bit farther in and get underneath the LCD itself. And there we go. You will see two different layers, and they do look kind of like they're a little bit connected. You basically have the digitizer, which is a flexible touch panel that is attached to the plastic itself. You don't want to pry underneath the edge of that. You do want to lift up underneath this backlight panel. You'll see more of a glass type material, and that's going to be the LCD. If you slowly lift those up, just leave it on your heat mat and work your way around the edges, it will peel up and you can separate the two. We dropped it and it's stuck back on there, so let's see if we can pick that back up. There we go. And be very careful. You don't want to touch the inside of the digitizer because if you put any kind of fingerprints there, they can be pretty difficult to peel off. Just kind of working slowly around the edges. And there we go. And so this is the old LCD. You can discard it because it really has no use because it is broken. We're going to go and pull our new LCD out, and we're going to go ahead and put that back into the device. So the order of operations is a little bit different at this point. We don't want to necessarily put the LCD back on top of the digitizer. The reason for that is because you could misalign it and then it won't fit exactly as it should. The best way to do this is to put it back into the housing of the actual switch, because that'll allow it to self-align, and then we can put the digitizer back on as well, and that'll allow that to self-align, where basically we use the housing almost as like a mold and an alignment guide. So I'm going to go ahead and place this off to the side in a place where it will not get damaged, which this looks like a good one for now. It's actually turning it off, so we're not going to do that. We're going to set it off on the side there. And then now we're going to go ahead and put this back into our housing. You can go ahead and peel off the back of the LCD cover and place that off to the side. And now we're going to use our old LCD as reference. So we do want to take a look at it here. Looks like these fold down to match, and simple enough. So very easy there. We're going to hold it up at an angle like this and just kind of feed it in until it goes through all the way. Now we're going to take a look on the other side of the motherboard. We can see that it's come through, so we should be able to connect that in just fine. Now we need to work on getting the backlight circuit flex cable in. So flipping this up very carefully. Don't want to put any undue stress, just kind of take your time. You want to feed this little cable back in. And we should just be able to drop that down into the appropriate spot. Now when we flip it over and take a look, we see that our LCD ribbon flex cable is directly by the connector, and then our backlight circuit cable is right next to that connector as well. To make sure that these don't get damaged or anything like that, I am going to connect these in right now. So be very careful. You want to make sure that you plug this in completely straight, and that you don't dig a corner in first. If you dig a corner and slide it within the connector itself, you can damage some pins. And actually on 3DS repairs, that is one of the most common issues that people have with those, is they flip over LCD connectors and things like that, or the ribbon flex cables, and then they pull a pin sideways and damage it. Alright, so pro tip on this particular part. It is pretty difficult to get in there if you don't pre-bend the LCD flex cable itself. So because it's in the device already, it's already kind of pre-bent. If you put a little bit of a bend on here, you'll notice that now when you go to plug it in, it'll be much easier. So if you're struggling with it because it's kind of flipping on you, go ahead and pre-bend the cable, and then it will allow you to plug it in so much easier. So just like that, it's pretty easy, and it'll go right in. So now go ahead and work on the other side over here. Actually, our backlight cable snuck out, so we're going to go and put that one back in. All right, perfect. Now we can go ahead and flip this over, align up our LCD so that it's completely sitting in the actual hole itself, and then we can take our digitizer and put it back on. Seeing that our digitizer has good adhesive on it still, we didn't separate any of it because we used enough heat. We can just apply this right back on there, just like normal. I do recommend using canned air for this particular part because you do want to blow out the inside of the LCD housing to make sure that there's no dust in there while you're doing your repair. But before you apply your digitizer on, you do want to remove this protective cover that comes installed on the LCD itself. This is a matte finish LCD, so it's pretty difficult to get any kind of fingerprints on it, but still don't touch it because you don't want to get any kind of fingerprints or anything like that on there. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take our canned air, get that ready, and then we're going to install our digitizer. So go ahead and blow this off. Make sure it gets any of that dust that may have fallen on there. And now at this point, we want to feed the digitizer cable in. And once we have it in on that one side, we do want to stick it down, and then we want to hold the device up. Because now at this point, we're going to be able to blow in here. You want to blow out you want to blow the full cavity out, and then carefully lay your screen back down on top. And at this point, what will happen is your LCD has been aligned because it's inside of the actual housing. It's going to stick back to that adhesive that was on the back of the digitizer. And then the digitizer adhesive is going to stick to the housing, holding everything in place. So now we see here we do have almost everything all put back together. So we can see that all that we need to do is put a couple other things in there in order to test it. But we'll do that and we'll see how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and put the game reader back in, connect everything up, and then we're going to power it on and see if we have image. Now that we have it partially assembled just enough in order to test it, we can plug the battery back in and flip it over and press the power button. And we can check and see if our LCD is working properly. One of the things to do with this is hold it in your hand while it's powering up if you don't have a back housing on it. The reason for that is because it does have an internal fan that does spin, so once it heats up, the fan may turn on to activate the cooling process, and you don't want that fan to get stopped or obtruded in any way. What you can actually do is if you did need to lay it down, you can get a screwdriver and basically place it underneath the edge, and it'll hold your switch up off the table itself, allowing the fan to spin freely. So as we can see here, it's all lit up. I would recommend doing a full touch test, making sure that all the touch works, and you can basically access your game, swipe through the screens, and make sure that you don't have any drop in your touch. For this particular switch, I'm going to go ahead and finish the assembly process so you can see the rest of the steps all put together from start to finish. So let's go ahead and do that. What you want to do is, if you've laid out all your screws as they should, you'll be able to place them all back in very easily. What you want to do at this point is make sure that your game reader is fully secured in there, that your heatsink screws are as well, and that is really just about all that you need to put in there before putting on this back cover. Placing the back cover on is pretty simple. Ours actually does have a bit of a bend to it because this one was closed inside of a recliner, which was pretty interesting. So go ahead and put all the rest of the screws back in there. Now at this point, if you have your mid plate already installed, it's time to install our back plastic cover. But if you remember before, we actually installed these screws back in these slides, and we need to pull those out to allow the cover to fit on properly. Let's go ahead and take out both of those screws, set them off to the side for just a moment, and then place your cover back on. Now go ahead and put all your screws into the side of the switch. Now at this point you can put the back cover screws in, which some of those are going to be Phillips and some of those are going to be tri-wing. And then ultimately put in the two bottom screws that hold in the housing near the dock. And on this particular console, if yours is in the same situation where it's been squished, there is one screw that won't really hold that well in because the bracket is actually broken. But we're going to try to place this back in there anyway and see how it holds in, because it may actually hold in, but it's not going to be able to hold down the actual housing itself. Yeah, and at this point it's not actually screwing in anything, so we're going to leave that one out. But as you notice, you may have like a slight gap like this one in particular, but that will be a little bit of a compromise considering this one was closed inside of a recliner, but now everything works. If you followed all the steps from the beginning of this video to now, you'll have a switch that went from broken to now fully working. I appreciate everyone that's still watching. Don't forget the like button and subscribe to our channel, and be sure to comment below what you want to see in future videos. If you want to see more switch stuff, let us know and we'll put more of that up. Or if you want to see PS4 repairs, let us know as well. Or maybe something with an iPhone that you're working on that you want to have featured on our channel, just comment below and we'll do our best to make a video to help you out. But appreciate y'all watching, and once again, my name is Ben from ProFixer, and I'll see you on the next video.